Today on Stock Charts in Focus, we're exploring three of my absolute favorite volume analysis tools. Three things that I cannot live without as a chartist. Now, volume, of course, that all-important complement to price. And today, we're really going to dig into it, take that volume analysis to the next level with three tools that I use on a daily basis. We're going to do this in ACP. We're going to do this in SharpCharts, show you all around the site, show you how to get more out of these volume tools. So lots to cover on the show today. Of course, you know what it is. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stock Charts in Focus. All right, my friends, welcome to the show, Stock Charts in Focus. Of course, our product focus show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into the features, show you around the tools, and ultimately help you get more value out of Stock Charts. That is our mission here on this show. Every Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time up on the live channel, but of course also up on our YouTube channel after that and the new on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. Lots of different ways to watch. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com, and today, as always, is going to be a fun episode as we dig into some of the volume tools that I use in my own approach as an active trader, as an active investor, as an active chartist technical analyst. Of course, we do this quite a bit on this show, looking at tools and features of the site that I use in my own approach, but today is going to be a really fun one as we look at, like we said, three of my favorite absolute go-to volume analysis tools. Now, along the way, we're going to talk a little bit about some of these tools, but we're also going to talk about how I've set them up on my charts. There's some interesting little configuration tricks that you're going to see. Like I said, we're going to do this in ACP. We're then going to jump over to SharpCharts, take a look at some of these tools over in SharpCharts as well. So a nice full tour of a couple of different charting platforms here around Stock Charts. And along the way, like I said, you are going to see some interesting little tips and tricks for how to set these volume tools up on your charts. So without further ado, let's jump right over to the site and get into my three favorite volume analysis tools. All right, everyone. So welcome to the site. Welcome to ACP. This is going to be our first stop on today's tour. We're going to start with ACP because actually one of the tools we're going to highlight on today's show only exists at the moment in ACP. This is part of our free relative volume plugin for ACP. If you're a Stock Charts member, as we'll talk about in just a couple of minutes, you can get this plugin for free. It includes three new relative volume tools that you can add right into your ACP experience. So we'll highlight that in just a minute when we get to our relative volume tool. That's going to be one of the three that we highlight today. But we are going to start before that with something that's going to sound a little simple. We're going to start with volume itself. Now, of course, if we're looking at volume, we're thinking about volume. Volume itself is going to be one of the most crucial tools. I know it sounds a little simple, it sounds a little obvious, but it's important to remember that volume itself is an incredibly powerful, incredibly important tool. But we're going to put one little spin on this, as you will see in just a minute. Now, before we jump into that, I'm going to say something that might sound a little controversial for a second, but let's just talk through this. Volume itself does not matter. What I mean by that is that the volume numbers themselves, the numbers of shares traded every single day, does not matter. When you look at different securities of different sizes, when you look at stocks, ETFs, indexes, all that stuff, anything that has volume, it's not the values that actually matter. We could say the same thing about price, right? It's not the price number itself. It's not that value that matters. It's how that price is moving over time. And it's that price relative to other securities that you could buy. That's what we call relative strength when we're looking at price charts. For instance, on the chart that we're looking at right up at the top, we've got a price panel, but we also have a price relative line, or the relative strength line, which is comparing, in this case, Mosaic to the Vanguard total stock market, the total US stock market. So this is giving us a sense of how price is moving relative to a benchmark. Well, we can do something very, very similar with volume as well. Again, it's not those volume values that actually matter. It's the relative volume. It's today's volume value relative to yesterday's, relative to the last 50 days, relative to the average over the last n number of periods. So when I say that the volume values don't matter, what I mean is that what actually matters is how that volume compares to volume in the past. So our first stop on today's tour, like I said, is going to be volume itself. I have added this as an indicator down here on my ACP charts. You can see we've got the volume legend right there. And on this chart, this is going to appear down at the bottom. Now I've set this up to be a little bit grayed out. Again, this is kind of my chart style, the way that I've configured it. And we'll take a look at that in just a second. But you might be able to see if you are looking closely, I'll actually turn off the crosshair so this becomes a little more sort of obvious. We've got this little horizontal line going across our charts. And right below the volume legend, we have something that says MA 200. This is a 200 period simple moving average of volume. So again, the volume values don't matter. What matters is relative volume. What matters is those individual volume numbers, each day's volume bar, relative to the average over a certain period of time. So I've done one little setup trick here with my volume indicator on my charts, which is to add a simple moving average to it. And that allows me to see every day's volume relative to the sort of average over the last 200, in this case, days. We could do this on a weekly chart as well. We could do it on a monthly chart, an intraday chart, whatever time period we're using. We can add that simple moving average to our volume bars, and that's going to allow us to say, is this a high volume day? Is this a low volume day? How is this day's volume relative to the average? So this makes it really, really obvious to see when volume is big or when volume is below that average. For instance, in the chart that we are currently looking at, we're looking at Mosaic here. We had a nice breakout. I'll actually turn the crosshairs back on so we can kind of see this now. We had a nice breakout here in Mosaic a couple of weeks ago. We've seen a big run to the upside. Now there's kind of our breakout level. We can see it broke out, it bounced there, and then really took off to the upside. What we want to ask ourselves on a move like this is this a breakout on heavy volume? Are buyers really showing up? Are the bulls really coming in to buy this stock and drive it higher? In that case, we're going to see volume be above the average. Now, the reverse could be true. We could see a breakout like this, but if it's on low volume, that might be a weaker move. So we want to think about volume relative to that average. And by adding this little simple moving average down here to our volume bars, we can see that this move in Mosaic, again, there's our breakout. Down here, we can see this was on huge volume. Mosaic has been trading big volume over the last few sessions as it's made this monster move higher. So this tells us that buyers are really showing up to this moves, gives us a sort of a little bit more context to the price move that we are seeing. So again, I want to think about volume relative to that average, and adding this simple moving average to my volume charts allows me to do that. Now, here in ACP, let's take a look at how we can actually set this up. It's very simple to do. Like I said also at the start of the show, we are going to jump over to SharpCharts. We'll take a look at how to set up some of this stuff over in SharpCharts in just a little bit, but we're going to start here in ACP, run through a couple of these tools, and then we'll jump over to SharpCharts. So once you've added volume to your charts, to do that, all you have to do is come over to the chart settings panel on the left side of ACP, scroll down here in the add indicator menu, find volume in the menu, and you can give it a click to add that to your charts. But once you've added that volume panel to your charts, you can add it either separately or behind the price bars, as I've done right here. We're going to give volume a click, and that's going to open up the edit indicator menu for the volume bars. Now this is where you can configure everything. So we can set these up as solid bars, hollow bars. We can set this up as a line. We have a lot of different options here. I prefer the solid bars. I've also dragged the opacity down because I want those to be on my charts, but I don't want them to be too visually dominating. So I've actually kind of dragged the opacity on my volume bars down a little bit. We can set our up and down volume colors and everything. So here up at the top, this is sort of all our configuration options for volume itself. Now, our next step though is going to be to add that simple moving average. So down here at the bottom of this panel, you can see that you have an add overlays menu. So to add a moving average to your volume bars, all you've got to do is open up this select and overlay menu, and we can select our moving average type. Now we can also add a ton of other overlays to our volume bars, but in this case what we're going to do is add a simple moving average. We just got to give that a click, and that is going to add that overlay right to our volume bars. Now it's going to show up right here when we are in the edit indicator menu. Of course, I've already added this to my charts, but when you add that to your charts, it's going to jump over to the edit panel for that simple moving average. If you want to edit this simple moving average, you can either click on the legend that appears on the charts, or if you're in the volume panel, it's going to show up here because you've got that overlay added to your volume bars. And you can also come in here and give that little gears icon a click. So let's say we've added that simple moving average to our volume bars. We're now looking at the edit panel for the MA on the volume bars, if that makes sense. And again, we have a bunch of configuration options. So here's how I have personally set up my moving average on these volume bars. I've dragged this out to be 200 periods. I want it to be a little bit longer term. So I'm looking at a 200-day moving average of the volume bars. I have not put any offset on this, but if you did want to set an offset, you have that. Here, this is what this moving average is going to be calculated from. So we're actually going to leave that one alone. This is going to be calculated, as you can see, from volume. So that means this moving average is going to be applied to the volume bars. And then we have a couple more style options. So we can set this to be any kind of line that we want. If we wanted this to be a histogram or an area chart, we could also do that. In my case, I'm just going to leave this as an auto line. That's going to kind of do the smartest thing. ACP is automatically going to know what to do there. I've dragged, again, the opacity down a little bit to kind of fade that line out just a touch to kind of match visually the volume bars that I've also faded out a little bit. And then I've set my color. Now, in this case, I want this to just be kind of a gray line. So I picked that kind of dark gray color and then again, faded that out just a little bit. So that's how I have set up my simple moving average. But once you've added that to your charts, it is right there and you've got that 200 period moving average on the volume bars. I find this, again, very, very helpful for analyzing volume. When I look down at that panel, again, I want to know, is this a big volume day? Is this a low volume day? Are buyers really, really showing up? Are sellers really, really showing up? So having that simple moving average drawn across those volume bars just gives me a little more context for volume itself. Again, volume doesn't matter. What matters is relative volume. So this allows me to see that a little bit better. So that is our first stop, volume itself. Now, volume itself, we're talking a lot about relative volume, how that matters. So our next tool up is going to be relative volume. Before we jump into this tool, again, I want to give you a little bit of background on how we can actually bring this into our charts. So what we did a couple of months ago here at StockCharts, we rolled out a new ACP plugin, something that we have been adding to ACP. We've got a lot of partners that have been adding these plugins. For instance, the Chaikin stock rating power gauge plugin that Mark Chaikin and his team brought out. We've got plugins from Larry Williams and Arthur Hill, Miss Schneider and her team at Market Gauge. We've got the Go No Go plugins. We've been adding a ton of these. Now, some of them are paid, but a lot of them are free as well. So we at StockCharts have added some free plugins to the site, to the system. So if you are a StockCharts member, you can go and install any of those free plugins in just a single click. Those are going to add a whole bunch of indicators to your ACP experience. So one that we're going to look at right now is one of our relative volume indicators that comes with the relative volume pack. To explore all of these plugins, look to the right side of ACP. Down kind of at the bottom, you've got a little plug icon. When you open that up, it's going to show you actually all of the installed plugins that you have in your account. But down below, if you don't have any plugins, it'll show you the full list of available plugins that we have. It'll also show you the prices, so you can actually see which ones are free, which ones are paid. In this case, the first two up in the list are those free plugins that we here at StockCharts have added to ACP. So we've got our advanced indicator pack, which comes with about 7 additional indicators, things like TTM squeeze, a couple of new moving averages, distance from moving average, a couple of great indicators in that pack. But the other one that we've added is our relative volume pack. This comes with 3 relative volume indicators: a standalone relative volume tool, It comes with the relative volume price plot, which is actually the one that we're going to look at in just a minute. And it also comes with an intraday indicator called relative volume time of day. So again, this is totally free. If you're a StockCharts member, just open up ACP, come right over to here, give that button a click, and it'll jump you over. You can install this in one click. Once you install one of these plugins, the indicators actually show up over here on the left side of the screen. So in the Add Indicator menu, down at the bottom, you'll see that these actually add little groups. So in this case, if you add the Advanced Indicator Pack, you'll get a new group full of all the indicators that are included there. There you can see balance of power, Connor's RSI, that distance from moving average indicator. When you add the Relative Volume plugin, that's going to add those 3 indicators as a new group down here at the bottom of the Add Indicator menu. You can, by the way, favorite any of these to make them appear up at the top. So in my case, again, we're talking about 3 of my favorite volume indicators. So I've actually favorited the relative volume price plot. I've given that click, that little star a click, and that is going to mean that it shows up right at the top. So you can see that shows up here in my favorites list at the top of that Add Indicator menu. So a little tour there of plugins, what they mean, how you can install them. Once you do it, it's very, very easy to start using these indicators, and they are standard indicators. Anything that you can do with any other indicator in ACP, you can do with those plugin indicators as well. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about volume indicator number 2. That is going to be that relative volume price plot. So we took that concept of relative volume mattering more than just the volume bars, and we said, okay, let's make an indicator that demonstrates relative volume in kind of a different way. So we've got a standalone relative volume indicator, which is going to basically allow you to set a baseline, and it's going to rejigger those volume bars to show above and below a baseline. So you can effectively take that concept of a moving average, and instead of displaying the moving average across the volume bars, you can display those volume bars above and below that moving average. We created, however, in addition to that standalone relative volume indicator that can sit kind of at the bottom of your charts or the top of your charts as an individual panel, we've created an overlay version of this. We call it the relative volume price plot. If you're looking at this chart, you might have noticed that there are a couple of little arrows along the chart, especially over to the right as Mosaic has made this huge move higher. So what this indicator does, it takes that relative volume concept and it puts it right onto the price bars for you. So instead of having a separate indicator panel down at the bottom or above, you can configure this relative volume indicator however you want, and it'll display these little arrows either above or below the price bars depending on how you've set it up. What each one of these represents is whether that day was above average or below average. So this will make sense when we take a look at the settings menu. So we've added this to our charts. Let's say we've done that. I'm going to click the legend here, which opens up the edit indicator panel for our relative volume price plot. Let's walk through the menus and then we'll talk about some interpretation here. So up top, you are setting your periods. This is basically setting the moving average that you want to think about for your relative volume indicator. Now, we used a 200 period moving average down here for volume itself, so I've done the same thing on my charts. I've set this up with a 200 period relative volume price plot. So I've dragged that out a little bit. You can set your moving average type. If you wanted this to be a little bit quicker, you could use an exponential. Again, I'm using a simple down on the volume bars itself, so I've left the price plot here with a simple moving average as well. Now we're going to skip over baseline for just a second. I do want to say you've got a couple of display options down at the bottom. You can say above average only, below average only, or above and below. Let's take a quick look at how this would look. If you set it up with above and below, that's going to put a marker on any day that is above the average and any day that is below the average, which means that in essence, almost every single day is going to get a little marker. Now this is great, tells you each day whether it's above average or below average volume right there on your charts. But in my case, I like to really focus on the above average days. So I've set this up with just above average only. You've got your final display option down here, which is your color settings. You can open up any of these. If you wanted them to be little black arrows or blue or orange, any color, you can do that. In my case, I want it to match my volume bars, which are green and red. So I've set this up with green for above average and red for below average. Now I'm going to go back up to our baseline setting. So what this is going to do is set a multiplier on the moving average that you choose. So in my case, I've got my 200-day moving average down here on the volume bars themselves. And so visually, I can see whether each day is above or below that 200-day moving average. I want to really focus in though on the days that are high above average. Maybe I want to do this with way below average as well. But in my case, again, kind of mostly playing the long side, I want to know days that are really above average volume. So I've set a multiplier on that of 1.5. Now, if you set this to 1, it's just going to be the 200-day moving average or whatever period you choose up here. But in this case, the baseline is going to say, show me little markers on the chart every time the volume for this day is more than 1.5 times the average that I've set up here with my period menu. So the way that I've set this up, I know that each one of these markers, this is 50% above average volume, if you want to think about it kind of in percentage terms, or 1.5 times the average. Every time I see one of these little green markers on my charts, I know that this is big volume on that day. Now we can see we had a couple of these back here that were kind of scattered here, and we can look down and see, yeah, those were pretty big volume spikes. For instance, here's a big green arrow, and we've got a big green spike. What's interesting though is when we see a huge cluster of these little up arrows, I know that this is a period of intense volume, lots and lots of volume trading in this security. We can see that reflected down here. Again, it's the same kind of concept. We're looking at volume relative to that average, so we can see these volume bars are way above that 200 period moving average that we've got on this chart. And we can see we've got those big clusters of those up arrows on all of these candles up here on Mosaic. So this relative volume price plot is a very cool way to quickly say this must be a huge day because I've set a 1.5 or maybe even a 2x baseline off that moving average, off that 200 period or 50 period, whatever it is. So you can know that every time you see one of those arrows, that is big volume trading on that day. So we can adjust this a little bit. Let's say we wanted to do 2. You can see that now we're going to end up with even fewer arrows because we've changed that baseline. So now it's only going to show us those little markers on things that are 2 times the average volume. We could do this at 2.5 even. Now we're going to have even fewer. We could do this at 3. Oh, typed in a 2 there. We could do this at 3, and now each one of these markers is 3 times the average volume. So these are huge days. We can see that we actually had a cluster of those 3x volume days, which is just big volume trading here in Mosaic on this move higher. So again, I love the visual here with these little markers. I've grayed those out a little bit, kind of dulled them out by dragging down the opacity in my color pickers. So they are still on my chart, but again, I don't like things to be super visually dominating. I want to keep price first, so that's why I keep a couple of these indicators kind of grayed out just a touch. But hopefully you see how these little markers can be helpful for you. And again, you can sort of manipulate this, drag that baseline either up or down, drag that moving average up and down too. Lots of different ways you can set up this relative volume indicator. And you have 2 flavors of it, just to reiterate that. You've got the price plot flavor of it, which is going to show these little markers, but the standalone relative volume indicator, which you can chart as its own panel down below your price panel, that's going to do the exact same thing. You can set up that baseline, you can set up your moving average and your colors and all that stuff. It's just going to kind of display it as volume bars down at the bottom relative to that average. So a couple of different ways to chart relative volume here with the indicators in this plugin. So finally, third up, we're going to look at 2 indicators. Okay, I kind of lied. Now I've got them in one panel, which is very cool, but we're actually going to look at 2 volume-based indicators that are my next on my list. So down here on this chart, I'm going to scroll down. The other 2 volume indicators that I use on all my charts that I absolutely love, can't live without, are accumulation-distribution and on-balance volume. Now, I have these 2 indicators on the same panel because they are very similar to each other. They effectively do the same thing. They're looking at volume, looking at money flow, trying to sort of sniff out accumulation and distribution, as you can tell by the name, but they have slightly different calculations to them. So on balance volume is basically going to look at the close to the close. If the close of today is above the close of yesterday, it's going to take all the volume from today and add it. The multiplier basically is going to be +1. If the close of today is less than yesterday, it's going to take all that volume from today and subtract it. Accumulation distribution does something very, very similar, but it looks at the range of the day. So a slightly different calculation, a little bit more active, kind of bringing in more of the sort of the intraday action, if you will. But they are the same indicator doing the same thing, just with slightly different calculations. Now, we've got actually a great video that Arthur Hill did quite a few years ago, but still totally relevant. I went back actually and watched it yesterday. And just thought this is an awesome video from Arthur. So we're going to link that in the description below. It's one of the old videos that Arthur did quite a few years ago, but it's a great explanation of the differences between on-balance volume and accumulation distribution. He did such a great job with that video. I want to make sure that you all have access to it. So we'll link that down in the description below. You can take a look at that, but the idea here is that both of these indicators, they are volume based, and they're trying to tell you how money is flowing in and out of a stock. So when you see these lines moving up, you know that there's a lot of money flowing into that stock. That's sort of positive money flow. When you see these lines flowing down, that means there's a lot of volume coming out of that stock. That's more of a distribution kind of look to that security. So in this case, here with Mosaic, we can see that on this move higher, again, we've had a big run higher. We've seen that be big volume trading to the upside as well. So we're seeing both of these indicators moving up, which tells us that there is a lot of buying going on here in Mosaic. So again, this is my sort of third favorite volume tool. It's a set of two that I like to use: accumulation distribution and on balance volume together. Now, I mentioned that there were going to be some interesting sort of chart configuration tricks. This is one of them. So we've taken a look at adding that simple moving average to your volume bars. We've taken a look at customizing that relative volume price plot. We're going to do the same thing with accumulation distribution and on balance volume. It is a little bit kind of creative, maybe. I've heard that from some people, having both of these in the same panel. So we're going to take a look at how to do that. It is very easy. Once you add one of these indicators to the chart, it's going to appear as its own panel. So actually, if we get rid of, well, let's do it from scratch. We'll actually get rid of on balance volume here. We'll delete that from the chart. Maybe we'll even delete, you know what, we'll start from scratch entirely here. We're going to delete the scooter line as well. We're going to go over to the add indicator panel, and we're going to find on balance volume and accumulation distribution. Now in my case, I've actually favorited both of these, so they're appearing at the top of my list. But when we click one of those, it's going to appear on our chart. All we got to do, give that a click. We can see that we now have accumulation distribution down at the bottom of this chart. Now this is going to appear by default with just a black line, which is totally fine for me. That's actually the visual that I like. So we've now added accumulation distribution to our charts. The next one is on balance volume. When we click on balance volume, just like accumulation distribution, this is going to add kind of as its own panel. So we now have on balance volume separate from accumulation distribution. If you were paying attention before, you probably noticed that we had on balance volume in kind of a lighter gray. I want these to be slightly different colors so I can tell which line is which. So I'm going to make on balance volume a light gray. Now we need to get these into the same panel. Well, that is very easy to do here in ACP. All we've got to do, hover over the chart legend, click and drag, and you'll see that when we drag that into the accumulation distribution panel, the accumulation distribution panel has that little yellow highlight around it. So now I can let go, and I've dropped that into this panel. So what we've now done is positioned that on balance volume indicator right behind the accumulation distribution. We now have those in the same panel. Again, I love this because they are two very similar indicators, slight sort of variations on each other, if you will. And so I want to see how they're moving together or how they're diverging. Occasionally, you'll see these going in different directions, and that tells you something quite interesting. Maybe you're seeing the on-balance volume continue higher, but you're seeing accumulation really start to decline. Well, that tells you that from day to day, we're seeing a lot of moves up and up and up, But intraday, we're sort of struggling to hold on to those gains. We're typically closing near the lows instead of closing near the highs. That'll make sense if you watch Arthur's video. He does, again, a great explanation of these two indicators. But I love having them positioned in the same panel. And again, that is very, very easy to do here in ACP. So that is our tour of my 3 favorite volume indicators here in ACP. We've got volume itself with that 200-day, 200-period moving average. We've got our relative volume price plot as well. And then our bonus round, we've kind of got 2 jammed into one. We've got accumulation distribution and on-balance volume charted in the same panel. So those are my favorite volume indicators. Again, things that I use on all my charts, absolute go-tos. I would say tools that I can't live without. What's interesting about all of these is that they apply across time frames as well. So I love to look at relative volume on my weekly charts. I love to look at that relative volume price plot on my weekly charts as well. And accumulation distribution plus on-balance volume, those two together, especially on intraday charts, an incredibly powerful visual. One thing that I like to do with my intraday charts is pull up 1-minute charts. So each bar represents a single minute of trading. I'll look at that over the last 50 to 75 days. And when you combine the accumulation distribution and on-balance volume with those 1-minute charts, when you put those onto a 1-minute time frame, a lot of times it's amazing the sort of accumulation distribution campaigns, the volume analysis that you can pick up on those intraday charts. So again, I use all of these across time frames. They're all incredibly important to my process, and hopefully you've seen a little bit of that today. Now, before I let you go, I want to jump over to SharpCharts. We'll take a look at how to set up 2 of these on our SharpCharts because we want to highlight that as well. At the moment, the relative volume price plot does not exist in SharpCharts. Again, that's part of one of our ACP plugins you can install for free as a StockCharts member. We are looking at bringing some of that stuff over to SharpCharts, little preview of what's coming this year. But for now, if you want to access that relative volume price plot, download or install that ACP plugin, and you'll have access to that right here in ACP. Little helpful trick too before we jump off ACP, if you are a SharpCharts user and any of those plugins intrigue you, remember you can access any of your saved SharpCharts here in ACP. You can actually come over, open up the chart lists sidebar on the right side of the screen, select SharpCharts up at the top, and then this menu is actually going to show you all of your SharpCharts chart lists here in ACP. So you can click into any of those to actually pull up basically an ACP version of your saved SharpChart. It's a great way to bring over your lists, bring over the symbols that you're watching, bring over your chart configurations right into ACP without having to set anything up. And then if you want to add in any of those plugin indicators in there in ACP, you can do that very, very easily. So a nice little trick there. If you're a SharpCharts user, you can take advantage of some of these tools here in ACP and not have to recreate all of your work. Just look for that little SharpCharts tab in the sidebar. So with that, let's jump over to SharpCharts really quickly. We'll take a look at how to set up those 2 indicators, volume with the moving average, and then accumulation distribution and on-balance volume together in the same panel. All right, everyone, so we are here on the SharpCharts workbench. We've got our chart of Mosaic again, and we've jumped over to a chart that's going to look very, very similar. Again, my charts in ACP and in SharpCharts are effectively the same, no difference, just using those different platforms. So we're looking at a chart that looks very, very similar. If we scroll down here, we're missing our RVol price plot indicator, but you can see we've got the same kind of thing. We've got our volume right there, and we've got our 200 period moving average of volume. So down here, we can see our volume bars faded out. We've got that same gray line going across. That is for our moving average of volume. Same kind of idea. I've got that 200 period on there. Allows me to see relative volume a little more easily. We'll scroll down and we'll take a look at how to set that up in just a second. As we scroll down this chart, you'll see something else that looks very similar. That is our accumulation distribution and on balance volume in the same panel. Same setup. I've got the accumulation distribution there with the black line, and I've got on balance volume there with the gray line. So it makes it easy to distinguish between the 2 of these. This is very, very easy to set up. So let's scroll down here to the bottom of the workbench. The first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that this advanced options section is open. Give that little green button a click. That's going to pop that open to the right side of those main menus. Now, if you've added volume down here as its own indicator, as I have, you can set that to be either behind price or above price, below price, whatever you want. In my case, I've set that up behind price. So those volume bars, as we see, are going to appear in the price panel. Now I've done a couple of little things. Again, I like to fade out my volume bars just a little bit so that they don't visually dominate. So I've set that opacity at 0.2. And then to add our moving average, we look for that overlay menu and we select simple moving average. Now, in the parameters box, we can type in our period that we want for that moving average. And if we use a colon and then a specific color, we can actually set the color that we want as well. So in my case, again, we want that 200 period simple moving average on our volume bars. So I've selected SMA and then I've got 200 colon gray in the parameters box. That's going to add a gray 200 period moving average to the volume bars, just like we had in ACP. Now, to set up the accumulation distribution and on-balance volume in the same panel here in SharpCharts, we add accumulation distribution as its own panel. I've set the position of that to be below, so that's going to appear below the price panel. Again, we've got our black line for that indicator for the accumulation distribution. And then we want to set up our on-balance volume behind that accumulation distribution line, and we want that to have a gray line. So what we've done with that is added an on-balance volume here in the indicators menu. And in our position menu, we've used that final option, which is behind indicator. So if this is positioned below something, you can set it to behind indicator, and whatever is right above it, it'll automatically appear behind that indicator. This is a great way to set up price panels of different securities all on kind of one panel. You can do a lot with this. There are tons and tons of tricks. The behind indicator position is a very fun one to play around with. So in this case, for on-balance volume, we've selected behind indicator. That's going to appear behind our accumulation distribution line. We've selected gray as our color. Hit update, and there we go. Now we've got both of those charting in the same panel. Very cool to have those together. Again, very similar indicators doing kind of similar things, but they do occasionally diverge. As you can see here, we had on-balance volume kind of getting ahead of accumulation distribution. Here we had on-balance volume actually declining while accumulation distribution kind of stayed flat. So this tells us that from day to day, we were seeing the stock move lower, but on an intraday basis, it was actually holding up pretty well with that accumulation distribution continuing to kind of go sideways. So interesting things that we can pick up here having those two indicators together. Again, my third favorite sort of combination of two volume-based indicators. So that is our show for today. I know a long one every time that we do ACP and SharpCharts together always ends up being a little bit of a longer episode, but hopefully you've had some fun taking a look at three of my favorite volume-based indicators. Again, tools that I can't live without as a chartist, as a technical analyst, as an active trader, active investor. These are things that are absolutely at the top of my toolkit. Some of my favorites, some of my go-tos, across periods as well. Dailies, weeklies, intraday charts. A lot of these tools really kind of span those time periods and can be incredibly valuable no matter what period you are looking at. So if you're a longer term investor, if you're a shorter term trader, these same concepts still apply. All this relative volume and money flow analysis can be incredibly helpful for you. So thank you so much for joining me on today's show. I do want to remind everyone we do this every Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on StockCharts TV on the live channel, but also up on our YouTube channel after that and the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. So lots of different ways to watch. Again, my name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. It's been so fun to sit down with you for another episode of StockCharts in Focus. We'll be back again next week. We've got some exciting stuff coming in the next couple of weeks. Big features rolling out on StockCharts in the next few weeks. So stay tuned. Definitely tune into the show to hear more about it. This is going to be the place to learn more about all the new stuff that we're rolling out in the next couple of weeks. StockCharts in Focus every Friday. Hope you'll join me again. But until then, chart on, my friends.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.